The CIA publishes organizational charts of its agency. Here are a few examples. Executive officers. Previously, the Director of Central Intelligence oversaw the intelligence community, serving as the President's principal intelligence advisor, additionally serving as head of the Central Intelligence Agency. The Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 amended the National Security Act to provide for a Director of National Intelligence, who would assume some of the roles formerly fulfilled by the DCI, with a separate Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. The DCI's title now is Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, serving as head of the CIA. Currently, the Central Intelligence Agency answers directly to the Director of National Intelligence. Although the CIA Director may brief the President directly, the CIA has its budget approved by the U.S. Congress, a subcommittee of which see the line items. The intelligence community, however, does not take direct orders from the Congress. The National Security Advisor is a permanent member of the National Security Council, responsible for briefing the President with pertinent information collected by all 16 U.S. intelligence community agencies are under the policy, but not necessarily budgetary, authority of the Director of National Intelligence. The effect of the personalities of the DCIs on the structure and behavior of the agency, and indeed the IC, is analyzed in Painter's dissertation on early leader effects of Donovan, Dulles and Hoover. Until the creation of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Director of the CIA met regularly with the President to issue daily reports on ongoing operations. After the creation of the post of DNI, currently Mike McConnell, the report is now given by the DNI, who oversees all U.S. intelligence activities, including intelligence community operations outside of CIA jurisdiction. Former CIA Director Porter Goss, who had been a CIA officer, denied this has had a diminishing effect on morale, but promoted his mission to reform the CIA into the lean and agile counterterrorism-focused force he believes it should be. A deputy director of the CIA assists the director in his duties as head of the CIA and exercises the powers of the director when the director's position is vacant or in the director's absence or disability. Either the director and deputy director may be a military officer, but both positions may not be filled at the same time by military officers. On July 5, 2006, the position of executive director, who managed day-to-day operations and budget, was replaced with an associate deputy director of the CIA relationship with Congress. There have been various arrangements to handle the CIA's relationship with Congress. It began with a single position named the Legislative Liaison, which later became the Legislative Council. Eventually it became an office. In the 1970s, congressional inquiries demanded a great increase in staffing and a reorganization. In the 1980s, several more reorganizations and renamings followed. Near the end of the 1980s, the office was named the Office of Congressional Affairs and as of 2009, has kept that name. See also CIA Office of Congressional Affairs Support to the Military. As the DCIA's principal advisor and representative on military issues, the Associate Director for Military Support, a senior general officer, coordinates CIA efforts to provide joint force commanders, who are principally consumers of national-level intelligence but producers of operational intelligence. The ADMS also supports Department of Defense officials who oversee military intelligence training and the acquisition of intelligence systems and technology. John A. Gordon was the first ADMS before the creation of ODNI. There is also an Associate Deputy Director for Operations for Military Affairs. The Office of Military Affairs provides intelligence and operational support to the U.S. Armed Forces. Covert Action Authorities. President George W. Bush, in creating the National Clandestine Service, set a clear policy that the CIA would be in charge of all human intelligence operations. NCS collects clandestine human intelligence collection and conducts deniable psychological operations and paramilitary operations. See Psychological Operations. Creation of the NCS was the culmination of a years-old turf war regarding influence, philosophy and budget between the United States Department of Defense and the CIA. Special Activities Division is the NCS's unit responsible for covert action and special activities. These special activities include the covert political influence and paramilitary operations. Special Operations Group is the element within SAD responsible for paramilitary operations. They recruit solely from the Joint Special Operations Command and then trained through an extensive course to become a clandestine intelligence officer. This unit is the most secretive and one of the most elite special operations forces in the world. Covert action authorities come from the National Security Act of 1947. President Ronald Reagan issued Executive Order 12333 titled United States Intelligence Activities in 1984. This order defined covert action as both political and military activities that the U.S. government could legally deny and granted them exclusively to the CIA. The CIA was also designated as the sole authority under the 1991 Intelligence Authorization Act and mirrored in Title 50 of the United States Code, Section 413. The Pentagon commissioned a study to determine whether the CIA of the Department of Defense should conduct covert action paramilitary operations. The study determined that the CIA should maintain this capability and be the sole government agency conducting covert action. The DOD found that it does not have the legal authority to conduct covert action nor the agility to carry out these type of missions. Proposed support to Homeland Security. A great sensitivity remains about the CIA having domestic responsibilities, but it clearly will, on occasions, collect information outside the U.S. that relates directly to domestic security. The CIA, for example, is more likely to obtain HUMINT on terrorists than the very limited foreign resources of the Department of Homeland Security of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The DHS, like the military, is seen principally as a consumer of national intelligence, but its border and transportation security functions also produce intelligence. At present, however, there is no well-defined way for DHS to task intelligence collection agencies with its requirements. One proposal suggests using the ADMS as a prototype to create an AD Homeland Security in the CIA and possibly an equivalent position in the U.S. Justice Department, which through the FBI and other agencies legally collects domestic intelligence. This proposal is one of many to improve coordination and avoid intelligence failures caused by not connecting the dots, when the dots are held by different agencies. National estimates. Prior to 2004, CIA had two analytic roles. The main effort based in the Directorate of Intelligence, which used internal experts to analyze data collected by CIA, National Reconnaissance Office, the military collection organizations, and other parts of the intelligence community. Many of these reports were on current subjects, such as the status of a revolutionary group or the technical details of a new Chinese factory. Another function, however, was preparing estimates, which try to predict the future. Estimates are a product of the intelligence community as a whole. National intelligence estimates were the most extensively coordinated documents, often that could be scheduled on a regular basis, such as the regular report on Soviet intentions. Special national intelligence estimates were quick-response publications, often providing guidance in a crisis, but were still interagency consensus rather than CIA alone. CIA had a separate and prestigious office, going by different names and organizations, such as the Office of National Estimates, Board of National Estimates, or a set of national intelligence offices which would seek out the consensus of all the intelligence agencies, and then have some of the most senior analysts write a draft. The idea of such estimates is often credited to Sherman Kent, sometimes called the father of U.S. intelligence analysis, with special emphasis on the production of estimates. This function is now in the National Intelligence Council of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Originally defined in 1950, this responsibility stated, CIA is now in the business of producing what are called national intelligence estimates along the lines laid down in NSC 50. These papers are interdepartmental in character, designed to focus all available intelligence on a problem of importance to the national security. Quote, in the early days of the process, CIA used the State Department's intelligence staff for drafting the NIEs, but its small top-level Office of National Estimates was set up to integrate the departmental drafts. A senior CIA analyst responsible for the document would work out differences. There is also a process by which an agency can disagree with a comment called a reclama, which is a footnote expressing an alternate position. For an example of such dissents, see Special National Intelligence Estimate 10 September 65 in CIA Activities in Asia and the Pacific #Vietnam 1965 Viet Cong and Drive Reactions, where there are dissents to various parts from all or part of the military and from the Department of State. Upon approval by an interagency review committee, the paper becomes a NIE and is sent by the Director of Central Intelligence to the President, appropriate officers of cabinet level, and the NSC. Directorate of Intelligence. The DI is the analytical branch of the CIA, responsible for the production and dissemination of all source intelligence analysis on key foreign issues. While it has, like most government agencies, reorganized over the years, its current structure has 4 regional analytic groups, 6 groups for transnational issues, and 2 support units. Prior to the formation of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the President's daily brief was prepared by the CIA Office of Current Intelligence. Some open-source intelligence, such as the Foreign Broadcast Information Service, were, at different times, part of the Directorate of Intelligence of the Directorate of Science and AMP Technology. Along with other OSINT functions, the National Open Source Enterprise is now in the ODNI. Transnational groups. The Office of Terrorism Analysis, which supports the National Counter-Terrorism Center, is part of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The Office of Transnational Issues applies unique functional expertise to assess existing and emerging threats to U.S. national security and provides the most senior U.S. policymakers, military planners, and law enforcement with analysis, warning, and crisis support. The CIA Crime and Narcotics Center researches information on international narcotics trafficking and organized crime for policymakers and the law enforcement community. Since the CIA has no domestic police authority, it sends its analytic information to the FBI and other law enforcement organizations, such as the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Weapons Intelligence Non-Proliferation and Arms Control Center provides intelligence support, deals with national and non-national threats, as well as supporting threat reduction, arms control. This works with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, again cooperating with the FBI for domestic activity. The Counterintelligence Center Analysis Group identifies, monitors, and analyzes the efforts of foreign intelligence entities, both national and non-national, against U.S. interests. The Information Operations Center Analysis Group evaluates foreign threats to U.S. computer systems, particularly those that support critical infrastructures. It works with critical infrastructure protection organizations in the United States Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security, support and general units. The Office of Collection Strategies and Analysis provides comprehensive intelligence collection expertise to the DI, a wide range of senior agency and intelligence community officials, and key national policy makers. The Office of Policy Support customizes DI analysis and presents it to a wide variety of policy, law enforcement, military, and foreign liaison recipients. National Clandestine Service. The National Clandestine Service, a semi-independent service which was formerly the Directorate of Operations, is responsible for collection of foreign intelligence, principally from clandestine HUMINT sources, and covert action. The new name reflects its role as the coordinator of all human intelligence activities among various elements of the wider U.S. intelligence community. Note that there is an open source function in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which may be taking over certain legal interviews in the U.S. that previously were the Domestic Contact Division. While the NCS organization chart has not been published, although there have been prior descriptions of the Directorate of Plans of the Directorate of Operations, a fairly recent organization chart of the Defense Clandestine Service will indicate functions transferred into the NCS, and may well be fairly close to the overall NCS organizational structure. The Special Activities Division is a division of the Central Intelligence Agency National Clandestine Service, responsible for covert action paramilitary operations, the collection of intelligence in hostile and/or denied areas, and all high-threat military and/or intelligence operations when the U.S. government does not wish to be overtly associated with such activities. As such, members of the unit when on missions normally do not carry any objects or clothing that would associate them with the United States. If compromised during a mission, the government of the United States may legally deny their status and all knowledge of the mission. SAD officers are a majority of the recipients of the coveted Distinguished Intelligence Cross and the Intelligence Star. These are the two highest medals for valor in the CIA. Not surprisingly, SAD officers also make up the majority of those memorialized on the Wall of Honor at CIA headquarters. These paramilitary operations officers were the spearhead of the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. There are references to earlier structures in various historical documents. For example, in a CIA paper on the internal probe into the Bay of Pigs invasion, there are several comments on the Directorate of Plans organizational structure in 1962. Even though any large organization will constantly reorganize, the basic functions will stay and can be a clue to future organization. At the top level, Deputy Director for Plans Richard Bissell had two assistant deputy directors, C. Tracy Barnes and Richard Helms. Warner explains, operational details fell to Branch 4 of the DDP's Western Hemisphere Division, with some exceptions. Jacob Esterline, chief of the Cuba branch, reported directly to Bissell and Barnes rather than to his division chief, J. C. King, although King was regularly informed and often consulted. To confuse matters still further, Branch 4 had no direct control over the brigade's aircraft. which were managed by a separate DDP division that also took some orders directly from Deputy Director of Central Intelligence Charles P. Cabell, a U.S. Air Force general who liked to keep his hand in the planning of airdrops and other missions. Air operations, therefore, were in a separate division either for covert support, paramilitary operations, or both. Cuba branch had a Foreign Intelligence section, foreign intelligence being a term of art for HUMINT. The branch, however, established a separate G2 unit, subordinate to its paramilitary section, which planned the actual invasion. This gives us the model of a geographic branch with subordinate sections, at least for intelligence collection and paramilitary actions. Warner's paper also mentions that certain DDP groups were outside the scope of the post-mortem by Executive Director Lyman Kirkpatrick, but their mention tells us that these were representative components of the DDP. The Havana station of the Santiago base, the development of foreign intelligence assets and liaison contacts, Division D's technical collection programs, or counterintelligence work against the Cuban services. CIA stations are the parts of the embassy with officers under diplomatic cover, in a typical diplomatic office building. Bases, however, are large facilities for supporting operations, typically with an airfield, secure warehouses, barracks and training areas. Division D was the joint CIA-NSA collection effort, where CIA would use clandestine operations personnel to emplace NSA SIGINT senses. The reference to counterintelligence work appears to refer to a main counterintelligence division, presumably the counterintelligence staff under James Jesus Angleton. Directorate of Science and Technology. The Directorate of Science and Technology creates and applies innovative technology in support of the intelligence collection mission. The CIA has always shown a strong interest in how to use advances in technology to enhance its effectiveness. This interest in modern technology came from two main aims. Firstly, to harness these techniques its own use, and second, to counter any new technologies the Soviet Union might develop. This effort gained impetus in the 50s with the launch of the Sputnik satellite by the USSR. The agency is also extremely interested in computer and information technology. In 1999, the CIA created the venture capital firm In-Q-Tel to help fund and develop technologies of interest to the agency. Its website mentions its priorities being in application software and analytics, bio, nuclear and chemical technologies, communications and infrastructure, digital identity and security, embedded systems and power. In January 2008, its featured collaboration was with Stream-Based Systems, makers of a high-performance complex event processing software platform for real-time and historical analysis of high-volume intelligence data, using a new processing paradigm for structured query language, allowing queries against multiple real-time data streams, still updating the database. Directorate of Operations. The Directorate of Operations is responsible for collecting foreign intelligence mainly from clandestine HUMINT sources, and covert action. The name reflects its role as the coordinator of human intelligence activities among other elements of the wider U.S. intelligence community with their own HUMINT operations. The Directorate of Operations was created in an attempt to end years of rivalry over influence, philosophy and budget between the United States Department of Defense and the CIA. In spite of this, the Department of Defense recently organized its own global clandestine intelligence service, the Defense Clandestine Service, under the Defense Intelligence Agency. The precise present organization of this directorate is classified. Directorate of Analysis. The Directorate of Analysis produces all source intelligence investigation on key foreign and intercontinental issues relating to powerful and sometimes anti-government sensitive topics. It has 4 regional analytic groups, 6 groups for transnational issues, and 2 support units. Regional groups. There is an office dedicated to Iraq, and regional analytical offices covering the Office of Middle East and North Africa Analysis, the Office of South Asia Analysis, the Office of Russian and European Analysis, the Office of Asian Pacific, Latin American and African Analysis. Transnational groups. The Office of Terrorism Analysis supports the National Counter-Terrorism Center in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, CCIA. Transnational anti-terrorism activities. The Office of Transnational Issues assesses perceived existing and emerging threats to U.S. national security and provides the most senior policymakers, military planners, and law enforcement with analysis, warning, and crisis support. The CIA Crime and Narcotics Center researches information on international crime for policymakers and the law enforcement community. As the CIA has no legal domestic police authority, it usually sends its analyses to the FBI and other law enforcement organizations, such as the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Weapons Intelligence, Non-Proliferation, and Arms Control Center provides intelligence support related to national and non-national threats, as well as supporting threat reduction and arms control. It received the output of National Technical Means of Verification. The Counterintelligence Center Analysis Group identifies, monitors, and analyzes the efforts of foreign intelligence entities, both national and non-national, against U.S. government interests. It works with FBI personnel in the National Counterintelligence Executive of the Director of National Intelligence. The Information Operations Center Analysis Group deals with threats to U.S. computer systems. This unit supports DNI activities, support and general units. The Office of Collection Strategies and Analysis provides comprehensive intelligence collection expertise to the Directorate of Intelligence, to senior agency and intelligence community officials, and to key national policy makers. The Office of Policy Support customizes Directorate of Intelligence analysis and presents it to a wide variety of policy, law enforcement, military, and foreign liaison recipients.